Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show this evening. As usual, it promises to be another exciting evening as we delve into the topic navigating the marketing maze. A lot of people have businesses, they have products, services that they want to get out there, they want to get off the ground, and they wonder, how do I do that? Well, tonight we've got two experts that are going to be discussing this topic with us and get us to a point where we have actionable ideas that we can take away and use, whether you're a small to medium sized business or even a larger organization. We're going to go through the entire spectrum of marketing, talk about options that are available. When do you move from the do it yourself type of marketing to using a professional marketing agency? Um, so there's a lot we've got in store for you today. But as usual, we are live on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Please just share the links, invite your friends to join in this very informative session. Um, I would introduce our first guest this evening. She's got over 14 years of media strategy and planning experience. She is the strategy director at M6, having previously worked in other leading agencies such as PhD, Wavemaker, Arena Media. Her experience cuts across a broad portfolio of sectors, including news, travel, entertainment, finance, FMCG, to name such a few. And she's worked with some really big brands: The Times, Virgin Atlantic, Warner Bros., uh, Johnson and Johnson. Our guest this evening is Leslie Myers-Lamptey. Leslie, you are welcome to the show this evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Aiken. I'm glad to be part of your show.
Thank you. And our second guest for tonight has over 16 years experience in digital media, again, across agencies, networks, the client side, marketing side of things. Um, Jide works at Ubiquity. He's also strategy and innovation director at Ubiquity. So our two guests tonight know quite a lot about the entire media spectrum. And I want to welcome Jide to the show. Jide, you are welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Akin. Hey, Leslie.
Hello, hi.
Excellent. All right. So both of you are clearly experts in the industry. You've worked with some of the biggest brands that we've got out there. But before we get into this journey about marketing, we want to hear a little bit about your experience, your career path. Was this something that you planned? Did it just work out? Leslie, do you want to go first?
Thank you. I think the word expert is a little bit dangerous because the industry is constantly changing, and I don't think you can ever really be an expert at it. So always learning. But yeah, I think I think I've been in the industry for 14 years. I It wasn't necessarily, I think a lot of people fall into this industry quite often, just because it's sometimes a little bit of a mystery unless you know someone. So I studied politics at university, and then once I graduated, I knew I was interested in the communication side, how, different campaigns influence people. And that side of it brought me towards the advertising side. And I also did a little bit of media studies at A level. So I was aware of the industry, but often it's a bit of a mystery. But I happen to have a family member who's also part of it. So that gave me an understanding of what it was like. And I thought, sounds really exciting. I like how fast paced it is. And it also seems like a very fun industry as well. So it was something I wanted to get into. And right from the beginning, I chose digital as a path just because I knew that how much it was changing and how exciting, how much of a new medium it was.
Judy, what was it? What was it for you? Was this a planned journey, or not?
It was far from a planned journey, Akin. My degree was in mechanical engineering with French, so very different to anything marketing or communications related. Following kind of my 3 years at university, I then got a job in procurement in the auto industry, working for Peugeot up in Coventry, and then moved to still in procurement into the mobile operators. So I worked at Orange, Vodafone, and then at Three. And it was whilst I was at Three that I got into media. Whilst I was there, set up the kind of first ad-funded video service in the UK, and it was kind of from there developing kind of media presentations to take out to agencies that I sort of first learnt about the media world, and then it was from there that moved into working for an ad network and then agency side after that. So yeah, far from a planned journey into media.
Oh, wow. Thank you both for that. I think it also helps for people who may want a career in media or in marketing, um, to have you both as role models that they could follow. But let's get into the discussion for tonight. One of the first questions we have here is, you both work in slightly different segments of the marketing value chain. Can you help explain the different organizations an SME may want to interact with when they're thinking about marketing their product or service? Lesley, do you want to go first on that?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I think the term SME covers quite a wide range, really. It can be quite broad. Quite often it can be, a couple of people, quite a large organization. So I think it really depends on the size of the business and the organization, because some will have more complex business needs than others and marketing plans than other ones would. So for some businesses, it might fit for them to have a one-stop shop, one place that they go to where they can get all of their marketing needs. So that could be things from media, creative, or just a variety. But there's others where actually they need to actually involve and create and speak to different types of agencies. I work for a media agency, which really helps to define who their audience is, and then also in terms of where they should be advertising and how they should go about the advertising. So yeah, I think it depends on the individual needs of the business. Some will have skills inside, some will need an agency to almost act as like their marketing department for them.
Okay.
Yeah, and it also, sorry, I was just going to say, there's lots of different size of marketing agencies. So, I mean, Lesley and I worked together at Wavemaker a few years ago, which is one of the bigger media agencies. But there's lots of smaller, one-man band or half a dozen people that have set up in different types of marketing agencies, whether it's specialist social agencies, whether it's just a small creative shop. I know a number of different people who've set up themselves, who are working and helping small businesses where it may be, as Lesley said, one or two people in a business that need some help with their marketing activities. So really it's finding the right level of, or the right size of company to work with as well.
Oh, so for someone who has a small business, say someone who has just decided, let's make it really simple, a barber's shop, or someone who has a hairdressing salon, what kind of marketing would that kind of business consider? Lesley?
Yeah, so again, I think it depends on if it's a local business, So if it was like a barber shop or a salon, most of the time your customers will be coming within a certain range. So your marketing efforts will be more focused and a bit more about thinking, okay, how can I really sort of make the most of attracting people in the local area. So you might use channels which are a bit more regional, and this can really vary. It could be from advertising your local paper, it could be doing regional local ads in digital advertising, or it could be really helping those reviews and thinking, how do I get word of mouth to actually increase, or even doing some flyers in the local area. So it really depends. So something like that might end up being quite small, but then if you're a barbershop who has a franchise and you have barbershops all over the country, then you might start to do actually more national campaigns, and it might be a bigger advertising effort.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Jide, during this whole lockdown period, pandemic, a lot of people have lost their jobs, and people are naturally thinking about what do I do? And you have some people who maybe have started businesses. I know quite a lot of people who have started businesses. They're starting to run things out of their home. um, what would you say to those type of people, in terms of how they get their services out there, get people to know about what they're doing out there?
Yeah, I think it's about, the first step is thinking, what is it? What's the message that I want to get out, and who do I want to get that message to? It might be that it's a new barber shop in town, or it's a new, more of a service-based industry. It might be, you've decided to set up as a photographer. So your market is going to be considerably different, depending on the type of business it is that you're setting up. So just thinking about, who are the people that I want to reach? Where are they likely to be? What sort of things are they likely to be looking at? Are they likely to be online and on Facebook? Are they likely to be searching for things? Are they likely to be reading certain publications? Are they going to be just local to me? One of the great things with lockdown is that it's removed some of the barriers, the sort of geographic barriers to a lot of businesses. So, I've read a lot about people that were doing yoga lessons online, or online exercise classes, and that type of thing, where you would have had a very much a local, a local studio, or you might have been going around to people's houses, but it's going to be very local in your area. With online, taking those courses and classes online, then opens up your market to potentially the whole country. So, to Leslie's point, it's, are you going to be local? Are you going to be national? Who are you trying to reach? And thinking about, where are those people actually going to be when they're likely to be responsive to your message?
One of the challenges that some people have raised to me is, when we talk about marketing, all they think about is there's an advert running on TV, but they don't really know what it takes to go from, am I dealing with a creative agency? Am I dealing with a buying company? Am I dealing with a company who is helping me analyze what I'm doing? What are the different options in that sort of space that people may need to interact with? Jude, let me ask you that first.
Yeah, there's so many different resources that are available now. It's very easy to produce almost professional quality video just using your smartphone. Yeah, there's lots of apps on the app stores that can help you to edit that that video, add special effects to it, add different backgrounds. So there's lots of things that you can do yourself. And I think, one of the best resources for just about everything is online. Looking on Google, searching for different ways of doing things. There's lots of free resources online to help with creative, to help with planning, media campaigns, to help with analytics. There's lots of those services are either free or, for a small subscription, you can get a pro version that gives you even more features. But I think, there's so much that you can do just yourself with lots of free or very low cost resources.
Leslie, do you want to
And I
respond to that?
Yeah, no, I think it's, I think it's about understanding your business needs and what you're trying to, what your ultimate goal is. I think one of the things that either a marketing professional or an agency can offer is to understand how the full marketing mix works together. Because I think actually a lot of channels, so whether you're talking about digital, actually works really well with other media channels as well. So if you really want to start to scale and grow your business, it's about understanding the full marketing mix, how it works, and how you can optimize it to drive the most efficient and also effective campaigns. I think that there's lots of great tools out there and there's a lot of people doing it brilliantly on their own, but it's also easy to spend a lot of money in these digital channels and not see the returns. So what you're really buying into when you speak to a professional is them to really understand, how those tools work and how to get the most for your money. And they might be using the exact same tools as you are, but they will be able to drive better results and business results and better the bottom line as well.
So at what point in that journey would you say a business should move from using the tools themselves to working with an agency? Leslie?
Yeah. Again, I think it really depends on where your business is. I think that depending on the current level you're at, usually it gets to a point where you think, I can't do all this myself. There's probably going to be a point where you're not probably spending as much time as you'd like to optimizing your campaigns or getting your ads, or you're thinking, how do I get to that next level in terms of drawing in new customers and attracting new people. So I think it really depends on the business, and it's not a clear answer, unfortunately, because it does depend on your own business and your own needs. And it's up to you to think that, okay, am I looking to scale up? Do I want to start to either, look broader to other areas or expand, or do I just not have time or don't have the expertise? So it is up to the individual business needs. And again, in terms of what help they're going to need could really vary. Some might be in, the creative, the design, that side of it. Others could be about how do they reach more audiences. Another is like, how can they use their first party data more effectively? How can they start to analyze who's coming to their site? How can they improve the customer journey, and think about, make that through the funnel, the purchase funnel, a lot easier. But it really depends on the product and the service that you're offering as well. It's so unique to either different sectors or individual businesses that there's not really a clearer answer in terms of when you do it. It's kind of got to be right for your own business.
Okay. Jide, there's a question here that I'm going to pose to you too, because someone is talking about a particular type of business and would want to know what you think. But before I go to that question, Jide, Leslie talked about marketing mix there. I guess we're referring to the different channels that people may want to advertise through. What are you seeing in terms of the market from, is TV still remaining dominant, or are we in this, it's an all digital world, everybody is now just going digital? Focus your effort there.
Yeah, again, it depends on the size of the company. TV obviously is, it reaches a lot more people. but it's a lot more expensive. It's a lot more expensive from a production perspective, and it's more expensive to buy the airtime as well. So for many businesses, TV just doesn't make sense for advertising. But what digital does is it really lowers those barriers to entry. So the amount, as I said before, you could easily shoot, whether it's just taking a photo, whether it's a short video, you can very easily create your own advertising content just using a smartphone. And then you can very easily, place an advert on Facebook, or buy some search ads on Google. So really, I think that TV tends to be for bigger companies that are looking for that sort of broader brand awareness type reach. I think for most SMEs, digital is probably the channel that they're going to be operating most in. There may also be some, as Leslie mentioned earlier, thinking about local magazines, local newspapers, having some flyers that you give out, just flyer in the high street. If you're a new barber in town, flyer the high street on a Saturday and say, hey, come in next week for £10, for 10% off, or, just doing that kind of offer. So that's, the sort of getting the balance between that type of hyper local physical type marketing, putting even putting a card in the newsagent's window, which is the type of thing that you often see from cleaners and the like. But those things all work, and it's about finding the thing that's at the right price point for you as a business. You're going to have to allocate an amount of budget, and one of the key things we haven't really touched on yet is working out how you measure the impact. I think Leslie sort of mentioned it earlier, but really you need to work out how to measure the impact of your advertising. What is it that you're trying to do? Are you trying to drive sales? Are you trying to drive footfall? Are you trying to just drive awareness, word of mouth? And thinking then about how do you measure that? So do you measure sales? Do you measure visits to your Facebook page? You measure shares of your content, and then looking at, well, okay, how do I test and learn? So you create a video ad, you create a static ad, see which one drives more visits to your Facebook page, and make sure that you're measuring your advertising. I think that's one of the absolute key things. It's measurement and test and learn. So you really need to be testing what you're doing, seeing, is it working? If I try something slightly different, does that work better, or is it not as effective? And just keep on doing that.
Leslie, do you share that view as well? Or what's your
Oh,
perspective on
totally,
it?
yeah. Yes, no, definitely. I think Jide summarized it very well. It is all about test and learn. It's trying different things, but the ultimate is to know what it is you're trying to achieve. What's your goal here? What's your KPI, key performance indicator? Being really clear in terms of what outcome you're expecting, and that's how you can measure whether or not an ad campaign has been successful or not. So before you jump into, I want to do a certain type of advertising or a certain platform, like I want to see Google, I want to do Facebook, it's a bit, what is it there to do? What are you trying to do? Is it just trying to get people to your website? Is it trying to get people to buy or to drive in store? And then actually that might offer a different platform that you would end up using, or a different media channel or marketing channel. But yeah, I think it's it is about just being clear in terms of what it is that you want to try and achieve.
So I've got a question for you both, and Leslie, I'll start with you on this one. And since digital advertising is becoming, it is the big thing really in advertising, and people say that's the future. When you start to look at some of the big players, the Google, the Amazon, the Facebooks, can anybody, a business owner, really survive in digital marketing without using those platforms?
So it depends again on your product and your service that you want to try and that you're promoting, really, because actually, there's probably some local businesses near to where I live who I've seen actually really thrive over the whole COVID period. They've been very quick at adapting and pivoting, but they have used other channels such as like social media or something like that to try and get local traction and to get new customers coming through. But it really depends on who it is that you're trying to, what your ultimate goal is. They are, I think one of the things that's come out of, COVID-19 is that a lot of businesses are looking at more short-term solutions, and they are starting to, rather go for the more reliable, bigger names and companies such as the, Facebook, Google, or Amazon, which delivers in the short term. But I think when it comes to building brands, and if you really want to take your brand to the next level, then you have to look beyond these services. So a lot of the time, based on the size and the scale and the number of people that they can reach, it's more likely than not that you would end up using some of these services, some of these businesses and platforms. But it doesn't mean that it has to be the entirety of your marketing campaign. And there could be more effective or efficient ways of reaching your audience or reaching your goals without actually using them. So again, it's about just going back in terms of what your objective is, and working out what is the most effective for your brand or for your product or service that you are selling.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got a question here. Someone has set up, I think this is a learning platform, something similar to a LinkedIn learning type site. And they're saying, what kind of advice would you give to them from a marketing perspective for growing that business? Now, from what I can see here, it's an African-based site, and they're saying, what kind of advice do you want to give them from a marketing perspective? Lesley, do you want to do that? And then we'll go to Jide.
Yeah, sure. So, without again knowing exactly what the learning platform is, it's hard to give specific advice, but I can give some broad things that I'd always recommend is to think about your customer first. Think about the customer experience and the journey, and make sure that is optimized as much as possible. Make sure you can be found easily. Make sure that it's easy to use, and that encourages higher usage, which then increases word of mouth, and helps for more people to discover and to find your this learning platform. So I think make sure that all of those things are, if you're happy and comfortable that the service can be found easily, that the user experience is very good, then I think about, okay, is it a certain sector that you're trying to get to this learning platform? Are there certain topics that you are trying to you mostly talk about on this platform, and that will be useful? And then think about how do you outreach to those organizations. But without seeing full details in terms of what it is, it's a bit difficult to be more specific. But always start with the customer first. Think about the user experience. Think about who it is you're trying to go for, and then focus your efforts into attracting more people like that.
Fantastic. Jide, you want to contribute to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, what Lesley says about the customer experience is absolutely key. And then I think in terms of advertising or trying to find your audience, it's working out who is your audience. So if it's learning, what sort of learning is it? Is it sort of professional based learning? Is it more sort of school type education? Is it vocational learning? What sort, so understanding the type of learning that it is that you're doing, and then thinking about where are those people going to be spending their time. So if it's career type learning, then those people are going to be on LinkedIn. So look at how do you utilize LinkedIn as a platform. If it's very local learning, bit more vocational type learning, then can you build an audience on Facebook to try to reach those people. So they're going to be completely, quite distinct audiences, that it's important that you try to find the right audience. For example, if it's about helping people, helping teenagers with their school learning, you're going to be finding those people in completely different places to where you're finding professionals who are looking at career development.
Wow, thank you for that. Now, there is a key question. I think it was you, Leslie, that touched on this briefly, and that's the impact of COVID-19 on advertising generally. Um, what sort of opportunities would you say the pandemic has created for people, and what sort of changes are you seeing in the advertising landscape? Leslie?
Yeah, so it's had a huge impact on on the industry. I think it's just been a complete knockout blow, as it has been to a lot of other sectors as well. But definitely, when it comes to advertising, COVID has had a massive, massive impact, and this has been really across the board. It could be from whether it's about marketing budgets being cut, media consumption completely changing, whether it's the change in teams, and how people also advertise and market their product as well. Some of the areas where we've seen some of the biggest changes has been things such as like outdoor, cinema, and press, which basically were hugely impacted over COVID. We are seeing things pick up again, but we're still seeing the side effects, and it still hasn't returned to the same levels. So what we found with a lot of marketing budgets, people were going online, as Jide sort of highlighted before. Sometimes some services were moved to online and digital, and people are really capitalizing on that. But it's to be interesting to see whether or not these changes are long-term and permanent changes, or if it's rather just a bit more of a temporary thing, because actually what ends up happening is that people are quite habitual in terms of what they do and how they behave. So with the return to school, return to work, people start getting into normal routines again, and then actually slipping away from some of the kind of digital transformation that we saw before. So that's one thing that will be quite interesting. But there's obviously been a lot more people adopting to digital services and using them and feeling a bit more confident, which does open up opportunities. But you are then also competing with some big brands and big budgets. So it is harder to stand out because there's more noise as well in the digital space. So that's why having a really clear strategy and approach in terms of who is it that you're trying to attract, what are the best environments for you to be advertising in, and how to get those customers knowing about your brand is really crucial at this time.
Jide, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to see which of the sort of behavioral changes that we've seen in the last 6 months actually stick, and how quickly will people return back to the cinema and see, cinema advertising going up again. If you look at sort of how quickly people have returned to pubs and restaurants, then, that's been pretty much straight back to business as usual over the last few weeks. And I think if you look at sort of how, certainly if I look at how I've adapted through sort of the different phases of lockdown, you have a slight transition period, but then after a week or two, that's become the new normal again. And so, those behaviors that you thought, oh yeah, it's really nice in lockdown, I've been going out for lots of walks, and isn't the peace really nice, and all this kind of thing. As soon as lockdown lifts, everybody's out in their cars and those walks sort of cease. And so it'll be interesting to see how those behavioral changes actually stick. I think in terms of advertising and even businesses, I think what lockdown has done is really accelerate a lot of transformation for a lot of businesses. So if you think about even GP surgeries, where you used to have to ring up and go into the surgery to get an appointment, and you'd have to take time out of your day at work or take half a day's off holiday, etc. And that's been the situation for ever since. And the number of times you thought, oh, but I just want to be able to ring up and speak to the doctor. It's something really simple. And with lockdown and that social distancing, those doctors' surgeries have had to really transform the way that they kind of effectively do business. And you can now do online consultations with your GP. That's kind of transformation that would have taken years for the NHS to really get its head around, and instead it happened in 2 or 3 months. Similarly, as I mentioned before about the barriers to entry in terms of geographical barriers, where everything goes online, suddenly you're not competing just with the local gym in your village or in your neighborhood. Suddenly there's all sorts of people who are online offering courses, yoga courses, exercise classes. Could be somebody on the other side of the world. So I think that has had a big impact on businesses and the way that businesses need to think about who's my competition. That's something that we haven't really touched upon yet. As well as thinking who your customers are, you need to think about who your competition is and how you differentiate yourself from your competition, how you potentially reach your competitors' customers, and also defensively, how do you protect your customers from your competition?
You raise an interesting point there in terms of competition and differentiation, because these days we used to say that having a decent online presence, having a website at one point was a big game changer. Then suddenly that got commoditized. Everybody now has a website, and then you're getting to a stage now where everybody is having a Zoom meeting, everybody is having these kind of sessions, and you're thinking, how do I differentiate myself in this
Mhm.
kind of space? And the question for you is this: what makes the difference for an organization? Leslie?
Well, yeah, if there's one magic thing, then that would be great. But it depends on it depends. It really is the brand, though, because people it's a far more emotional rather than a rational reason as to why people tend to choose one brand over another. So that's why investing in your brand in terms of what your brand stands for, what it represents, and who you go after, and why people want to be associated with it is so important. And this is why it's sometimes quite a challenge when you're only looking at very short-term numbers and short-term planning, where you're just looking for a quick sell, because you're not investing in that long-term, which is that brand. So in the same way that why do people buy Coca-Cola and pay 5 times more than, and supermarket's own brand cola, it's because, or purely because of the brand, and that requires that premium, because people want to be associated with a certain one. They believe that it's going to taste differently, or it has different outcomes, but a lot of the time that is just marketing and part of it. So I think one of the key things is about how do you invest in your brand, and how do you make sure you stand for something which is distinct, and can then be seen as different, so that people want to be associated with it. And really strong brands are those where people can really sort of like stand out and say, yeah, I like it because it's because it's part of me, and I like what they stand for. And even in the last few months, you're seeing some brands do a lot better with that than others, over the past few months, in terms of those who have either changed their advertising to show that they care and that understand the customers, or those who have really sort of like survived this time because people are really keen to maintain that connection with that brand, and they don't want to sort of like they don't want to sort of like substitute it for anything else.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that emotional connection with the brand and authenticity from a brand as well. And that doesn't, when we talk about emotional connection, authenticity with a brand, it doesn't need to be a super brand like Coca-Cola. It can be your local hairdresser, or for a wedding photographer or something like that. It's just being genuine in your communication to your customers. And I think also what Lesley said previously about thinking about the kind of customer experience is absolutely key as well. So, if you've got a great service, a great product, people are going to want to use it. And then they become, natural ambassadors for your product or for your service. We've all bought something and been, oh, it's absolutely amazing, it's great. That's money can't buy that kind of that kind of enthusiasm and promotion from people. So I think it's that emotional connection in an authentic way and with a product or a service that really delivers for the customer.
Wow. Thank you for that. Now, let's move on to this next question here. Obviously, both of you, I'm sure, had seen the videos of the brutal killing of George Floyd in the US, and how that triggered quite a lot of mainstream discourse on the issue of black faces in senior roles within the media industry. Both of you are, I would say, bucking the trend. Both of you are in a position where you're advising the big brands, you're advising the big organizations on what to do with their marketing. First of all, do you share this view that black faces are underrepresented in marketing? And secondly, has the absence of black faces in media impacted the way black businesses have been able to grow?
I think certainly at a senior level, there's a lack of black faces, a lack of black people in management roles. I've seen quite a bit of sort of tokenism from from senior leaders in the advertising industry, sort of saying, supporting Black Lives Matter, but then you look at their board, you look at their senior leadership team, and it's all, white faces, primarily male faces. So that diversity just, isn't happening at the higher levels. I think at the more junior levels, there's a pretty good representation. But yeah, certainly, when you look at the senior roles, that is missing. And I think it probably does impact the way that media is run. I was talking with somebody who set up his own agency and ad network to ensure diversity in sort of audiences reached. So a lot of the time, Lesley and I, when I was media agency side, and Lesley, I'm sure now we'll be doing the same sort of thing. You plan to an audience, so you say, just picking something random, it would be far better put together audience than this. But say you choose an audience that is male and females, aged 25 to 34. It's a fairly straightforward kind of audience. And so you go out and you think, okay, where am I going to plan to buy this audience? And you'll probably buy some fairly mainstream kind of audiences. So you might, whether it's digital or print, you might buy, places like Mail Online or, some other news brands. You might buy some entertainment brands. But actually, a lot of the audiences for those media owners where we place advertising are actually, that white middle class kind of audience. And so if you're not careful, you're actually not hitting those audiences or those widespread audiences that you might want to reach. And that's been a problem, for the government when it comes to getting COVID-19 messages out there about social distancing, about simple hand hygiene, things like that. Then it's very easy for them to run with those mainstream sites, but then they're going to miss some of those Black, Asian, and other ethnicities with those messaging, and that has partly been a contributor to the fact that in the UK People from minority ethnicities have been adversely impacted by COVID-19 because they haven't been getting those messages that have been getting through to the sort of mainstream white audiences.
Leslie, what's your perspective on the point here?
Yeah, so in terms of the question about whether or not I share the view that there aren't enough black faces in the industry, that I think absolutely, I think the stats absolutely, speak for themselves. There was a recent, looking at last year, I think they said there was only 4.7% of C-suite, positions in the industry of people from BAME backgrounds. And again, that's not even just picking out black people from that, which I'm sure the number will be far lower if we actually had the ability to sort of like look at that in more detail. And that is actually down year on year. I think it was just over sort of like 5.5% in 2018. So it's gone down, those numbers. And when you look at the number of people, especially black people who are in the industry, who start out in the industry, and then you see those numbers, in terms of how many lead to senior positions, there's something obviously, going wrong with in terms of, progression within the industry. And it is something that needs to be addressed. So there have been some really good conversations that have happened since the killing of George Floyd, and there was an initiative as well, which was called Agency Commits, where 200, leading industry people signed it, whether it's individuals or agencies, signed it as a commitment to actually improve the representation of BAME audiences in the industry, and also to have themselves as being kept accountable as well for that, and under scrutiny. But again, this is all pledges, and so only time will tell whether or not that's had a real difference and people stick to it. I think really, everyone in the agency needs to go further, and I think if it were clients making those demands, it'll probably happen a lot quicker, and it'll be a bit more effective. But we'll have to see. It's in the step in the right direction, but definitely, a lot needs to be done. I know from my own personal experience, I've quite often been one of the only handful of black faces either in an agency or at least looking at senior positions. I can probably count on one hand out of the last 14 years how many black people were in senior positions. And again, once I look at black females, I've never had a black female who is, more senior than me in an agency that I've worked at. So there's something which is happening in the agency which we need to really address. So I think it is a big issue, and hopefully these discussions will actually lead to some quick and rapid changes.
How about if we look at that maybe slightly differently, and we look at this from the perspective of black-owned agencies? Are we seeing a rise in the number of black-owned agencies?
I personally haven't necessarily seen that. I haven't necessarily seen, an increase. There are a few, including my brother who recently launched one, actually his own,
Okay.
last year. So, but I think that he's been doing quite a lot in that space to try and raise awareness of some of the black owned businesses and agencies, especially in our sector and industry. But I would say that I haven't necessarily seen generally an increase or much more sort of like mentioned in the media when it comes to specifically to advertising. If we're talking about just black owned businesses in general, broader, then I think that recent efforts such as, Black Pound Day and things like that have been trying to raise the consciousness of Black-owned businesses and some of the barriers that Black people face when they are running their own business, and try and encourage more people to support them.
Do you think, and Jide, maybe I should go to you for this question. Do you think that clients will find it difficult to work with an agency that's maybe all Black?
I think that probably, we've talked about who your customer is, and I think an agency that is, deliberately all Black is probably targeting a certain type of business, and that's not necessarily targeting just Black businesses, but targeting businesses that want to be more diverse, that realize that they have a problem in reaching a diverse audience, and so they're actively looking to work with that kind of agency. I think for other brands, it's probably not something that they would necessarily think about. So yeah, I mean, you would hope that they wouldn't have a problem working with them. I think it's about going to be more about the work that they do, the type of work that they do, the speciality that they have, and whether all brands want to work with an agency that has that specialism.
All right, fantastic. Now we've got about 7 minutes left here, and I want you, Leslie, to talk a little bit about the kind of services your organization offers, so our viewers know what kind of services that. And Jide, if you do the same as well after Leslie, just so we know why we come to your kind of organization.
Yes. Yeah, so I work for a media agency, and our role of a media agency is to really help our clients understand who their audience is, and really define that for them, understand exactly who they should be targeting. We've spoken quite a lot about audiences, but I think getting that right can mean that you can bring in the right people to your brand, and also make it the most effective as well in terms of your marketing campaign, so people buy your product or service. So one of the things we'll be doing is have access to lots of tools where we can really understand who your audience is and who you should be targeting, advise you on that, and also advise you where you can find them as well. So like Jide was just saying, in terms of, where are they going to be? Are they more likely to be on certain social platforms? Are they likely to be reading certain publications? Are they likely to be watching certain channels? Are they likely to go into certain locations? Those are all the kinds of things that we can advise on. And then we'll actually do the deals to actually put your advertising in those environments. So where your audience are, and being an agency, will have access to better deals, and we can then buy it cheaper for you, so that then your money goes further. So we work as a partner to really sort of help you throughout to understand who it is to target, where to target them, and where to reach them, and how to do it.
Excellent. Jide?
Yeah, so I work at Ubiquity, which is a media consultancy company. So we work with brands, advertisers, to help them to understand the marketing ecosystem, understand the work that their agency is doing for them. We're a completely independent third party, so we kind of give the story warts and all, as to sort of agency performance, or campaign performance. Agencies obviously are going to want to paint the best picture of the work that they do, which is completely understandable, completely fair. What we try to do is provide the fully rounded picture. So sometimes, a lot of the time, the agency's doing a fantastic job, and we'll call that out. Sometimes there's certain areas where the brand hasn't understood the full picture of what the sort of situation is, and we can just help the brand to understand better the ecosystem, understand better what it is that their agency is doing, and give them more information so that they can make the best media decisions for their brand.
Oh, fantastic. Now, there's one area we were going to touch on, but maybe we can do that in 2 minutes. And it's this issue of contract compliance as it relates to marketing. Jide, is that something you want to talk to?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, contract compliance, agencies, when you appoint an agency, go through a pitch process, and agencies always come up with fantastic promises of what they're going to deliver. And basically, contract compliance is making sure that the agency has delivered what they said they were going to deliver, whether that's in terms of pricing, in terms of actual media bought, in terms of sort of rebates from media owners that they're passing back to you. Any of those sorts of elements. It's basically just making sure that the contract that you bought into has actually been delivered by the agency.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you both for joining us tonight. It's been very informative, very educative. Thank you so much for giving up your time this evening to join the session. I'm sure that our viewers would also be going back and viewing some of the details on this as we go along. So I want to thank you both. Thank you very much for your time, and I will join you in the studio shortly. So thank you everyone for being with us this evening. I'm sure you agree with me that this has been a very informative session. Well, the programs continue. On Thursday, we're going to have Through My Eyes with Professor Bolaji Akinyemi. And that's going to be an exciting one because we're having a guest this Thursday. It's going to be an amazing one. We're having Ambassador Yahaya from Kenya going to be joining us talking about current affairs. And next week, we're also going to be having an information security expert join us on the show as we start to address some of the challenges that individuals and organizations are facing in this post-COVID-19 new normal that we are seeing. So thank you very much across all the channels. Thank you for all those who have joined. We appreciate your time, and we hope to see you on some of the other programs.